Our performance level system is a systematization of our core approach, which is the functional design, where everything is subordinated to reproducing music at its highest possible potential. It doesn't matter whether it's level 5, level X, or level 1, it is exactly the same approach. Performance level system is your level of sophistication of a circuit design. The components and materials quality is then more defined by the version as we move up and the performance level 3 upward. That's where that becomes more crucial, more important. From level 1 to 3, we keep things relatively simple. And then the simplicity starts fading because we go into more sophisticated and more refined products. I invite anybody to come and to experience everything I say for oneself, because we can play the DAC 1, we can play the DAC 2, the DAC 3, DAC 4, the DAC 5, and DAC X. And one can clearly see the evolution and the evolvement and the increase in sound quality as one moves across those levels. And pretty much the same can be said about any other source product that we make, whether it's a phono, LPU 1 to LPU 5, or whether it's a pre or any other product that is part of the performance level system. So we have a clear system, which is where the performance is highly correlated to the price one pays for it. That corresponds to the level of sophistication of the output tubes and its power supplies and everything that comes involves that circuit design. And if one goes and pays huge amount for a product that involves signal capacitors and output stage, that is no different from entry-level product. I feel sorry for all those customers, right? There's no evolution, there's no improvement on that design, but at a much higher cost and a much higher price. It is relatively easy to build a DAC 1 or LPU 1 product because it doesn't require so many materials and components, and it's much easier to execute this design. Therefore, the execution becomes very crucial at the higher performance level. So we can see clearly across every level which components, materials, tubes are being used. So if we look at the level 5, for example, we use directly heated triode, and that is true for the DAC 5, that is true for the LPU 5. One can see the commonality, whether it's LPU 3 balanced or DAC 3 balanced, we have the EL84. And the same applies to the tube output stage topology. Everything starts to become extremely elegantly simple and sophisticated in the same time when we start employing the inductive loading and signal decoupling. So using the signal transformers at the output. That starts with the DAC 3 or LPU 3 balanced, but everything else below is just using signal capacitors. This version is a smaller chassis which uses smaller output stage tubes. It uses signal capacitors, and then we have the balanced version which uses power tubes and signal output transformers instead of capacitors. Signal transformers is a superior way of decoupling the signal for an amplification stage. All the coupling between different amplification stages needs to be done in a very careful way. Tubes usually have higher internal resistance than transistors. They require a suitable partner to connect the signal between one gain stage with another. And a transformer is the ideal partner for tubes, not a capacitor. For transistor, a capacitor is totally fine because of their internal resistance. With valves, it's the other way around. Valves tend to be on a higher internal resistance, and output impedance becomes very crucial when they pass the signal to the next gain stage. A size of a tube directly corresponds to the spatial information when we reproduce music. So with larger tubes, everything becomes larger. The presentation becomes more spectacular. The distortion goes down. One can't possibly achieve great sound with small minimum components and low-cost signal capacitors. That's impossible. Every time when we choose a signal transformer, larger power tube that requires more sophisticated power supplies, it is unparalleled performance. It's a different level. And that's what we carry through our performance level system. As we go up, we go from small signal tubes, we go into power tubes. Then we go in the power pento tubes, which we connect as triodes, and then we evolve into power triodes and to directly heated triodes. everything goes up in size, in weight, in space, in cooling requirements. It becomes a different beast. Instruments become more lifelike. So one can expect to have a more realistic vocals, a larger presentation. That's why we have a performance system. Everything is systematized. It is impossible to maintain low-cost approach. If you look at the Pre-3, it is essentially the output stage of a LPU3 balanced or DAC3 balanced. It's based on the EL84. Well, what different is obviously it needs some sort of input, selection, and volume control. And that's basically it. The output stages are very similar. It's just different step-down ratio on the output transformers. You know, the amplification part of between Pre-3 and the DAC3 balanced is very similar, almost identical. Because we have everything is in the system, the same actually applies to the Pre-4. If you look at the Pre-4, Pre-4 uses 6v6, just like our LPU4 and our DAC4. The difference is that the output stage now is standalone and requires the input switch and the volume control. There's a commonality across those products at that performance level. That tube defines the sound character of that product. So the DAC5, LPU4 5, and the Pre-5, the same applies here. Everything at higher performance level is the least compromised product. The same pretty much applies with Pre's. Pre's is, technically speaking, a derivative of our output stages. We have limited space inside an envelope of a tube. There's only as many electrodes we can house in there. But if we reduce the size of others and maximize the size of the anode or the plate, then we can lower the distortion significantly. And that's what essentially happens. The size of the glass bottle increases, and we can achieve a lower distortion and larger spatial information. The dimension in holography becomes like no other. If one looks in our amplifier range, the same happens there. Slightly different rules apply, but one can see that we move from a power output pentodes, triode connected at the output stage, and then we move slowly in power and the size of these directly heated triodes at the output. That's what we adopted at a higher performance level, because that increases the requirements. It makes things more difficult. But when we move into the larger tubes, microphonics becomes an issue. The pickup through the tubes of the electromagnetic interference becomes an issue. Vibration becomes an issue. Tube location becomes an issue. The filament power supply requirements become an issue. They have to be extremely quiet, especially at the source, where they are at the beginning of the amplification. All the noise that we get is going to be amplified many times over. But one is rewarded with improved sound quality. If that's the case, then we do everything in our power and walk an extra mile. And I don't think you can say the same about other manufacturers. What we do naturally, and you can see across the performance level as well, is that we slowly substitute the number of the solid-state diodes with vacuum diodes, so tube rectifiers. Anybody who designed a circuit knows that a solid-state diode is just a small component. It doesn't require anything additional. But a tube rectifier has filaments. They don't operate at couple of milliamperes. You know, anything that is directly heated, that goes into amperes. And if we increase the number of those tube rectifiers, especially directly heated type, the number of those transformers grows in size and the number of those transformers increases. That drives the need for larger chassis. One can't possibly have a natural sound with those small little solid-state diodes. They produce a lot of switching noise, which is very unnatural. There's no way you can filter it out completely. It's no way you can make it natural due to the nature of the semiconductor material. Directly heated tube rectifiers, instead of all these small little semiconductors, elevates the naturalness, the plasticity, the organic nature of the sound to another level. That's what was our goal, to take everything we do, which is already outstanding, unparalleled in terms of quality. We want to take it to another dimension, and that's the statement level X. Our products at the level 4 and 5 already unlike everything else, but that's a class, that's a world of its own. So our performance level system, it's an embodiment or consolidation of our core principles and philosophies that we have adopted at SW1X Audio Design.